A peaceful moment that would forever alter the lives of two very different people occurred in the busy center of a city that is notorious for its bustle and commotion. Taylor Swift, the world-renowned musician whose songs have filled stadiums and warmed people's hearts all over the world, took an impromptu stroll through a neighborhood she didn't often frequent on a lovely afternoon. What began as a straightforward walk turned into a tale of tenacity, compassion, and the transformational potential of music that would ultimately motivate millions of others. That day, Taylor wasn't searching for motivation. She was trying to get away from the spotlight and get back in touch with reality while sporting large sunglasses, a hoodie, and casual pants. The sound of the city, the distant honking of automobiles, the conversation of onlookers, the buzz of life going on, was a reassuring diversion. But after a while, a tune broke through the clamor. Although it was unpolished and imperfect, it had an honesty and passion that caused Taylor to pause. She rounded a corner and saw him, a man with a guitar as worn as his clothes, sitting on a flimsy blanket. His fingers skillfully manipulated the strings, creating a hauntingly lovely melody. James Carter exuded the aura of someone who has experienced 100 lifetimes. His hair was disheveled, his clothing was torn, and his face was marked by adversity and fortitude. However, there was a certain enchantment that stopped people cold when he performed. His deep yet gravelly voice offered lyrics about hope, loss, and an unbreakable spirit. While the music encircled her, Taylor stood out of sight. It was a tale, not simply a song, and Taylor, who was always the storyteller, couldn't help but want to find out what it was. A tiny group of people gave a courteous applaud when the song ended, but Taylor remained. She moved forward and placed a folded bill into the guitar case that was open. There was silence for a time as James raised his head and met her gaze. "That was amazing," Taylor remarked earnestly. "You're incredibly talented." As though uncertain that she was speaking to him, James blinked. "Thank you," he whispered. "All I have left is music." Taylor ignored the odd looks of the people around him and knelt down to his level. "Please tell me your name," she said. "James Carter," he answered back. "Belonged to a band once. I just play wherever I can these days." She grinned. "James, your music has a genuine quality, as if you're sharing an important tale." James shrugged, his face reserved. Most individuals don't pause long enough to pay attention. James gradually opened up as they conversed. He used to play in pubs and other small places as a member of a local band. Their aspirations to succeed had carried them for some time. However, it drew them in opposite directions, as life frequently does. Bandmates went off to pursue steady careers, family obligations, or other endeavors. James remained behind, continuing to listen to the music. Then followed the most devastating blows, losing his job and losing a close relative. He ended himself on the streets, depending on his guitar to get by because there was no safety net to catch him. With pride and grief in his voice, James remarked, "I've written so many songs. Now, though, they are only for anyone who happens to walk by." His words broke Taylor's heart as she listened carefully. Although she could see the anguish in his eyes, she also saw tenacity. Despite all the reasons to give up, this person decided to continue creating. She whispered, "James, you have a gift. Never give up playing." Taylor couldn't help but feel compelled to do more as they conversed. She saw James as an artist whose voice should be heard, not as a project or a cause. She said, "Can I hear another song?" James nodded when he paused. He started playing a different song after adjusting the guitar on his lap. This one was more reflective and slower. Every note carried the weight of Taylor's experiences. She grinned broadly and clapped when he was done. "You're incredible," she remarked. "Have you considered recording these at all?" James shook his head and laughed quietly. "Recording? I hardly have enough money for strings." Ideas were already racing through Taylor's head. Although she remained silent at the time, she sensed that this encounter would not end on that street corner. Taylor couldn't stop thinking about James for the following few days. She made contact with a few reliable individuals in her network in an effort to discover discreet methods to assist, rather than to create a spectacle. She made arrangements for James to have meals, a safe place to stay, and the assistance he needed to get back on his feet through a neighborhood organization. Additionally, Taylor put him in touch with a small, independent recording studio that agreed to do pro bono work for him. In order to prevent James from feeling like a charity case, she paid the expenses in secret. James was overcome with emotion when he first entered the studio. The professional equipment and the soundproof walls were a universe away from the streets. However, all of his nerves vanished as soon as he picked up his guitar. He gave his all throughout the recording sessions, laying down tracks that perfectly encapsulated his music's unadulterated passion. James's songs developed a following, even if they didn't shatter streaming records or the charts. People who identified with his sincerity started to take notice of his music as it started to circulate in local circles. He began receiving invitations to perform at small settings, and each performance increased his confidence. Taylor remained in contact, quietly supporting him and commemorating his achievements from a distance. Instead of making a public statement or posting about him, she allowed James's music do the talking. James performed at a community gathering aimed at helping struggling artists a few months later. Looking out at the little crowd, he noticed faces who were there for the tale, not simply the music. James took the mic after finishing his last song. He recalled playing on a street corner a year ago and pondering whether anyone would ever hear him. "I'm here today because someone believed in me, and I began to believe in myself because they did." Applause broke out from the audience. Despite not being well known, James's music continued to have an impact on people's lives. He used his tale as evidence of the strength of kindness and resiliency, using his position to support homeless artists. Taylor, on the other hand, frequently reflected on that bright afternoon. She realized deep down that it was more than just making James's life better. It was about being reminded of the reasons she had initially begun creating music: to connect, to convey tales, and to derive meaning from the common human experience. Together, they demonstrated in their own unique ways that even the simplest actions may have the greatest effects.